tease it a little bit though. We're going to the draft, a little bit of a draft recap. Let me watch it, fix that on YouTube. Okay, but yeah, obviously, the other thing happened on Thursday. The NFL draft occurred. A few surprises, things in there. I guess we'll start off with I guess let me start with this. Were you surprised, in case you didn't know, that the number 3 pick, San Francisco 49ers, took Trey Lance out of North Dakota State? Seemed like the consensus was Mac Jones, but even though a few days earlier they said it was between the two, and then I think the day before, 24 hours before the draft, that was released at San Francisco. They just said that they had honed in on one guy, and it turns out, I guess, Trey Lance was the guy. Were you surprised at all, really, John, or was it just more of just okay, how shocked were you? Is the better question.
I mean, with a draft, it's just become one of those things where like you always feel like, okay, this is what I think is gonna happen, but then you just have like that deep feeling that the other thing is gonna happen, right? I mean, there's so many moments in this draft where that happened, and the first one was Trey Lance. I think the reports that it was between him and Mac Jones, that sort of came out of nowhere to me, and so that made it not as crazy when it actually happened. Um, Also, just the fact that, like they said, they didn't necessarily want to get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo. So, and Trey Lance is sort of a developmental guy. So, like, that made it even feel more realistic. I wasn't shocked. Um, I mean, I was a little, I don't understand. I don't know if, like, they came out and said Mac Jones was like a smokescreen kind of thing, but I don't understand why it would be or why it was. I think the interest there was real, just because of how similar the Alabama situation, but the offensive scheme they run is to San Francisco's. Um,
And like we
so
mentioned, I think the window that San
yeah,
Francisco is in played an
yeah,
important
but
part.
realistically, at the same time, I get it because I feel like a lot of people would agree that Trey Lance has a higher ceiling than Mac Jones. And so with Kyle Shanahan being the QB guru he is, he'll get the most out of Trey Lance out of anybody. So I'll say this, although maybe Trey Lance wasn't the quarterback I would have taken in that spot, I think Shanahan and the staff they have there, that is the best situation Trey Lance could have gone to. There's no better situation.
Yep.
This is basically like Mahomes going to Andy Reid. You have a guy who has some sort, which I'm not saying Trey Lance is going to be Patrick Mahomes, just to clarify that, but you
The
have a
fit.
sort of developmental kind of guy who you put him with a QB guru, a genius who can get the most out of him, right? And so yeah, and also there were some fits with what Trey Lance did in college. They did a lot of play action, bootlegs. They just a lot of things that San Francisco does do, and based on they did an interview right after the draft with ESPN. It was John Lynch and Shanahan talking to Scott Van Pelt, and they were saying like everything they talked with Trey Lance about in interviews, just all the stuff. They were so sold on him as a person and not just as a QB. They loved, his mentality, his mindset, all these kind of things on top of what they saw the potential in him. So yeah, like I said, maybe not the pick that I would have made, but wasn't shocked just because of the sort of trickling of news. I don't know if you saw, actually, apparently the betting line shifted the day before, and Trey Lance actually became the favorite to be the pick there.
Yeah, I didn't see that. I thought I went back to Mac, but maybe went back to Mac and Trey.
It might have gone back to Mac the
And
day
then
of. I don't know. It was the day before I know that Trey Lance was the favorite.
yeah, I'm not sure, but I mean, yeah. So I do agree with you. It's not a. It did surprise me a bit, but maybe like you mentioned, maybe they couldn't find a trade for Jimmy G. So I said, okay, maybe we just roll with Jimmy. Get and we'll let Trey sit behind him. And then if the inevitable, Jimmy injury occurs or Jimmy's not playing well week 4 or 5, okay, Trey's been here he's been able to watch for a few weeks and obviously kind of snaps and practice and training camp and all that. Okay, now we put him in, and see what he's got. But otherwise, I guess I wasn't too shocked, and also what I think happened too is remember the reports. There's a Shanahan liked Mac Jones, but it seems like everyone else liked Trey Lance, and it seems like maybe because of just pure numbers, maybe they said, "Look, Kyle, majority rules here. We're going with Trey." If things don't work out, then it seems like then you can go ahead and say that you were pro Mac Jones and we were pro Trey Lance, and who knows, maybe they had some sort of conversation like that to get Kyle on their side. And I'm assuming Kyle still liked Trey Lance. I'm just saying that it seems like he
Right.
liked Mac more. So yeah, that was a little bit of a shocker to me in the draft. But otherwise, I think it's a good fit, and we'll see. But yeah, like you mentioned, perfect situation, great O line, great run game, two good young receivers. If not the best, one of the best tight ends in the game. And then that defense was still solid last year, even though they lost Bosa and just went through a whole litany of injuries. Now this year, they'll have Nick Bosa back a year or two, Javon Kinlaw, Fred Warner another year, and hopefully their corner is a little better. So yeah, I mean this is a team that's still right in the window, and we've seen worse quarterbacks get their team be part of teams that went pretty far. I.e. Jacksonville with Blake Bortles and Case Keenum and the Vikings and such. So that's important to note too. That I think they feel like they have a good enough roster all around where Trey doesn't have to win games on his own. Like those guys didn't really have to. So
Right.
but yeah, I guess I'll let you go first for this part. Any other surprises in the draft that really got to you? I know you mentioned Surtain going to the Broncos at 9. That was tough. And honestly, at first, you can say your piece in a second. I was a little surprised by it. But then, whenever they broke it down, I thought about, well, they are in division with the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think both their corners are only on 1-year contracts. So, long-term guy. And then also, Chargers are also coming up, so maybe they're going to be an offensive powerhouse. So, but yeah, how did you feel when Surtain went at 9?
It was another one of those situations where you feel like you know what's going to happen, but then there's that deep feeling, like I said, that you think the one thing you don't think is going to happen is going to, being Surtain to the Broncos. There was rumors early on that he might go there, but to me, I I just truly didn't think they would, because, and I mean, there was even apparently talk that they consider Justin Fields, but I just didn't think that Elway was sold on Drew Lock. I didn't think that they would necessarily consider, okay, we're in a position where we can get a guy like Justin Fields, that they would maybe even be in that sort of position again when their team is fully healthy, because they do have a lot of talent on that roster, right? And so if this was like their one shot, if they wanted to really get another quarterback. But even then, I thought linebacker was just such a big need there. And I mean, even myself, I think both of us might have had Micah Parsons as our top defender on our big boards. And it seemed like that was sort of the general consensus, is that Micah Parsons was, he was the best linebacker in the draft. He was, one of those kind of guys. So I, I truly thought that if they went defense, it would be Micah Parsons. I didn't know that both their corners at the time were on 1-year deals, but even then, Kyle Fuller,
That may not
Bryce
be
Callahan.
true. I'm sorry. That may not be true. Maybe only one of them, but regardless, I know that I saw that they were both on shorter deals. Sorry.
Right.
Just want to make sure we get that factually correct.
But I mean, regardless, like they have good corners, right? They got Ronald Darby, they have Kyle Fuller, they have Bryce Callahan, who's one of the best,
Slot
nickel corners
guys.
in the league. So it just didn't feel like the immediate need would be Surtain. But I can't blame him for the pick. I was so high on him, and I know Kyle Fuller's on a 1-year deal for sure. So when he leaves, Surtain can fill that spot, right? Be your number one corner. It definitely sucked. It was a bit of a letdown for a Cowboys fan, but I know that the Cowboys themselves, I mean, they Stephen Jones, Jerry Jones' son, who kind of runs most of the stuff at this point. Obviously, Jerry's involved in all of it, but Stephen's sort of basically the general manager. He said that they had been talking about the possibility of Surtain or even J.C. Horn, because I think they were high on J.C. Horn as well. Neither of them being there at their pick, and they had, I think, 4 different scenarios planned for that. So I applaud them for sticking to the plan. They traded back 2 spots. I know that our Giants fan friend Roan thinks that it was to spite them, but realistically, the Cowboys knew they weren't taking Devonta Smith. I imagine nobody that was calling up wanted, to trade up for him. So they knew he was going to end up in the division. So why not trade back and get a third round pick out of it and still get one of your top two guys available, which I believe was Rashawn Slater, to slot in the offensive line. Immediately he could play left guard and be a starter there. And then in the future, transition to tackle, whether that's right or left, it doesn't really matter because La'el Collins can probably play both. Um, or if it was defensive side of the ball, they get Micah Parsons. So because they knew they'd get one of them, right? Because they moved back two spots. Philly's going to take Smith. The Giants could only take one of those, which I thought they'd take Parsons, but they did not. They traded back as well. So I applaud Dallas. They got an extra third round pick out of it, which we know in the draft, the more picks you have, the more chance you are to hit on somebody. And they took, in my opinion, the best defensive player on the board, although it wasn't who I wanted. I still like the pick. So yeah, the Surtain situation did surprise me, but I applaud my Cowboys for making the best out of a situation that maybe in a few years we'll look back and Micah Parsons will be a monster and we won't regret it at all.
Gotcha. So yeah, and then any other? I mean, so I'll say one more surprise for me was Jamin Davis to the Washington football team at 19, mainly because also, and I'll include this too, is the fall of Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I still didn't watch the day 2 of BR, but like, did they mention if there's an off-field or medical thing? Like, I'm still not sure as to why he fell to the second round, which, by the way, great pickup by Cleveland. They ended up getting the difference-making linebacker that they might need as opposed to the Washington football team. I think Jamin Davis is solid, but I don't think he's amazing. I think he's purely just I think his best strength is pass coverage, but other than that, I mean, he didn't wow me in the run game or tackling and things like that. Which maybe he can. I mean, I had the same concerns, kind of similar to Leighton Vander Esch, which also was maybe a little bit surprised as to why Dallas went linebacker. I think I'll even draft one later, but maybe you don't feel comfortable with Leighton Vander Esch, or I think he does have the concussion issues or something of that sort. I'm not sure. I know he's had some injuries, but I was just surprised that y'all went. I was a little surprised that y'all went linebacker, but more surprised that Jamin Davis went first round to Washington, because once again, I felt that there's better options on the board personally, but I could be wrong. But I'm trying to see any surprises on your end that you were shocked? It's mainly first round. That's what I'm trying to stick with. Sorry.
Well, real quick, just about Parsons. Some people might be surprised. If you're a Cowboys fan, there's actually Jalen Smith has actually statistically he's lived up to his, I think it was his sophomore season, 2018, when he had a really good year, and that was Leighton Vander Esch's rookie year, and they were considered the best linebacker room in the league. Since then, Jalen Smith has, I wouldn't say deteriorated, but his flaws have been exposed a lot more. When Vander Esch isn't on the field, Smith is required to do a lot more coverage, and he's pretty bad at it, to be honest. He can't really cover. I mean, obviously can't cover any receivers, but he's still not. He's athletic, but he's not good at covering tight ends and running backs out of the backfield and all that kind of stuff. So there's those issues, but also Leighton Vander Esch has the injury concerns. He's coming up on a contract year. They asked Dan Quinn about it after the draft, the whole draft, and because they also drafted Jabril Cox, linebacker out of LSU.
Who,
they were
by the way,
asking him,
very solid linebacker. I feel I think I got him 4th round, 5th round.
I think 5th round.
I had a 2nd or 3rd round grade on him. I liked him a lot.
Yeah, so I mean, it feels like a crowded linebacker room because Dan Quinn actually doubled down and said Keanu Neal will be playing linebacker. Didn't even say safety, just said linebacker. Which we know the Seattle scheme, right? The strong safety plays in sort of a linebacker-esque role. So maybe that's what he meant. I don't know. But he said linebacker. But when they asked him about the scheme, he said that mainly they're actually going to look like a 3-4. So with that being said, that's 4 linebackers on the field. I've also heard that Parsons is going to start in sort of a pass rusher / like an outside linebacker kind of role in a 3-4. Because of how many linebackers they do have, they like his ability to rush the passer. So they're just going to kind of put him on the field and let him do a lot of different things. But really, I think it also was just to put pressure on Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch, because there was even talk of them cutting Jalen Smith this past offseason. They committed a lot of money to him. So that's why they didn't do it. And I think they're going to play it out with, returning to a speed-friendly scheme. But yeah, I think it also gives them an option of because they didn't pick up Leighton Vander Esch's 5th-year option at least so far, so it gives them an option to move past that.
Okay.
But regardless of the Cowboys, I was also surprised by Jamin Davis. They did not talk about why Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah fell. The only reason that they brought up that was maybe a concern was his size. He's like 6'1", 215, but like Mel Kiper, he loved him. He was like, I don't understand why he's
He
falling.
played. That's one of those things. There's over analysis. Like he played bigger than his size. Like
Right.
I'm surprised he said 215 when I saw him. If anything surprised me was how fast he was for his size. I thought he would be like 240, 230. I mean, if anything, he's definitely a physically elite dude. So I'm not too concerned about his size. So sorry, but
Yeah.
go ahead.
So, I mean, they all the guys that were talking about him, they loved him, and apparently Cleveland reportedly actually considered taking him in round 1, and I applaud them for not doing it because they got him in round 2.
Well,
Um,
I don't applaud them. I got a little bit of luck that he fell down
but
again.
yeah, like obviously, they didn't know that was going to happen, but the fact that they were able to make that happen, they traded up when they did in the second round, and they still got him. Like great value pick right there. So yeah, I mean, there wasn't injury concerns. There wasn't like character issues. They didn't release anything as to why he slid out of the first round. So I have no clue why that happened. But in the first round, I was kind of surprised at Kadarius Toney going 20. Not because he's not talented enough or anything like that, but I felt like, I don't know, it just felt like if the Giants were going to take receiver, there were some other options on the board that maybe they would have wanted more so. But once again, I know that you were high on Kadarius Toney. I wasn't as high on him as you were, but I still think that he was a first round talent.
Yeah.
So, I mean, great pick there. I was just surprised that the Giants ended up doing it at the spot they did because I thought maybe he'd be around the Saints, Packers, that sort of range. But he went where he did. Good for him.
Yeah. Sorry, and I am surprised just by the pick of Toney because, like we mentioned before, like you just signed Kenny Golladay. They're pretty deep in receivers, so maybe they don't feel too comfortable with Sterling Shepard. Has had a bunch of injuries, concussions, hands, things like that. So maybe this is also kind of we've been talking about it to prove a year for Daniel Jones. Maybe it's also kind of a prove a year per se for Sterling Shepard. Hey Sterling, can you stay on the field? Can you be productive? If not, okay, fine. We have Kadarius Toney, and we'll put Slayton in the slot. So
right. I was also a bit surprised, but also not about 2 running backs going the first round. Yeah. Najee Harris, I wasn't as surprised about because it had been rumored he would go to Pittsburgh for so long that although I wouldn't do it, they did it, ETN, I liked the pick, just going to Jacksonville. Once again, I wouldn't take a running back in the first round, but it happened, and I like the fit. I didn't think they would do it because of Carlos Hyde and James Robinson already being on the team, but I think ETN gives them a unique fit that neither of those guys fill. Which is that more change of pace, agile receiving option.
Home run hitter.
Yeah. And so I liked that selection a lot. Otherwise, I mean, the whole, like starting with probably the Saints pick, I was surprised about everybody except for Oweh. Because I mean, in my mock, I had Oweh going to the Ravens. I just had him going the first spot and then a receiver going the second spot. Yeah. I wasn't super surprised about Rashad Bateman because I know a lot of people were high on him.
Yeah.
God, but Peyton Turner,
I was I was so happy when Baltimore took because I didn't want a receiver, but I didn't. And no offense to Rashad Bateman, I think he's very good slot. He'll be a very good slot. I just didn't see him as a first round wide receiver because first rounds like these guys are. I mean, granted, DK Metcalf should have been first round segment. Chase Claypool, those guys I saw as like physically elite. So as you saw, I just want to make it know I was very happy that Minnesota got him. I think it might work out there. I just didn't want Green Bay to get him, and then obviously we did what we did.
Yeah,
which I don't hate, but I didn't love.
Once Peyton Turner got picked by the Saints, which we already mentioned earlier, like it didn't make a whole lot of sense, especially with Oweh still on the board, with Azeez Ojulari
traded up to draft Marcus Davenport like 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, so that one. Plus, there was rumors of them like trading up for a quarterback or a corner.
They liked Caleb Farley, so
yeah,
apparently.
And then they took a defensive end. I don't know. It just I didn't feel like he was a first round guy. So that was a little weird. Then Eric Stokes to the Packers. I know that you'll want to talk about that, but that was another weird one. Rousseau to the Bills. I wasn't super high on because although which maybe I mean he has a crazy year of production, right? He was second behind Chase Young in the nation in sacks in 2019. So he had a lot of production. But I wasn't super sold on his moves, the ability to get to the quarterback, finishing the plays, all that kind of stuff. It didn't like wow me like the numbers did.
Yeah.
So
Also,
that one I was
his
a little concerned about. But other than that, I mean, also Joe Tryon for Tampa. But it's the 32nd pick of the first round. You just kind of take whoever is best on your board.
yeah. So the only last surprise I want to mention is Darisaw falling to 23. I was sitting with my friends. I was like after Slater. I mean, even before Slater, but like I thought at 13, I was like, okay, this has to be where Darisaw goes. Chargers get their guy, and then Slater. I was like, okay, it's Slater. Maybe they liked him better. Understandable. He's maybe more versatile. Okay, then New York trades up. I was like, oh, this has to be Darisaw. Man, Darisaw and Becton, those two guys, and then they get Elijah Vera Tucker, who good pick. They didn't need a they can play him at tackle, probably play him at guard. And then
Which
okay,
I will say for the Vera Tucker thing, I think they just wanted a guard
yeah.
realistically.
I mean, because you got Becton, and I think they signed a few guys, and so yeah, I think Vera Tucker maybe fit their scheme, what they want to do more. So once again I understood that. Obviously Baltimore at 17 did surprise me. I'm not gonna say Leatherwood. It's not the worst Mike Mayock reach of recent years. Like I had Leatherwood like end of the first round, and so
Same, but
it's still a reach.
Darius on
But
the board.
I was like,
Come
yeah.
on.
Once again, I felt Darius was better, and then Miami didn't get him, and then Washington. Just the fall kept going, and then I remember I was sitting there, I was like, oh no, do not get him, Minnesota. Do not get Darisaw because.
You literally said that in our chat, and then they took him.
And they took him because now, man, there's just gonna be more lanes for Dalvin Cook to run all over us, and that's not gonna be fun. So, yeah, Dalvin Cook stock went up there, but that was that was the last surprise I really wanted. Like, I mean, I want to mention because I wasn't surprised that Farley fell, wasn't surprised that Jalen Phillips, went 18, even though we both, I definitely felt those two guys were really good, but injury concerns. But otherwise, yeah, I agree with you. Running backs, not too surprised that Najee was linked to that a lot. And Travis, it's a good fit. But